Let me just preface this question with you cannot pick yourself. Who is your favorite tailor?
Ah, who is my favorite tailor? That's a good question. Oh. It's a broad term, so I think it's his favorite tailor or favorite person who's a tailor. Like it's, I wonder, like, what you asked me from like a personal perspective, or
Who would make your clothes if you did not make your clothes?
Very good. Right, yeah, probably Paul Flynn, I would say. Yeah, I'd ask if I had to go. If I had, if I were to go to Henry Poole's as a customer, I would probably ask Alex Cook to cut it and Paul Flynn to make it.
Is there a short story or anything that you can remember about Paul, because you spent a long time with him, and in fact he taught you so much of what you know now? And if you're going to have him make your clothes, is there anything that you would like people to know about Paul besides he's an excellent coat maker?
I think about Paul. I think like Paul is quite, he taught me a lot more than just tailoring. So he did. Like whenever I went to Savile Row, I was probably going through a bit of a rebellious streak in Ireland, and like the idea of, walking into the lion's den, we call it, of going to the likes of England and working there, it was daunting in a lot of ways. And I found Paul to be a true English gentleman. He's well spoken, and he always had lots of stories. He's a real storyteller, Paul. And but he educated me in a lot of ways, and particularly in conversing and talking to a person, that you, particularly somebody you had a different opinion with. It very much came from a culture, and it's actually quite true. A lot of Irish people, and experience it a lot now, and I feel the same frustration Paul feels when he was dealing with me. I understand how you felt, Paul. So I do. If you disagreed with somebody, Irish people would tend to say, "You're wrong." They'd be like, "You're wrong. That's crap. You don't know what you're talking about." Whereas with a British person or Paul, and people met at Savile Row, they would tell you why you're wrong. They would listen to your argument, and then they would offer an opposing argument that didn't include, "You're wrong. That's crap. I don't believe that." He says, like, what he's saying, that he says, you're not making an argument. You're just insulting the other person. And I thought, you're absolutely right. That is all that I'm doing. And it did take me a while to get out of that very old habit, because like that's what I was used to. I was used to it with my friends in Ireland, and I was used to it with my siblings, sitting around the dinner table. And when I'd go home then, and I'd sit and have dinner with them, and a heated argument or heated debate would start about something, and this is what I was confronted with: "You're wrong. That's crap." And you're going to realize that that's probably the weakest argument going. Like, you're sitting there going, like, haven't I just won this this argument? Like, if you cannot put up like an actual, a sensible response to something, let your passion for the subject, set that to one side and think about it. And I was amazed at how many opinions that I had that he changed. And even, I think even vice versa. Like, I think the more time we spent together, things that I would say, I heard coming out of his mouth, and certainly things he said coming out of mine. I think if you spend that much time with anybody. But he was a really good character. He was a father. He had a lot of, he had children from a young age. Like, so he was always a parent. Like, he was first child when he was 18. And I think he had 6 children altogether. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's 6. And they all turned out to be very well-rounded individuals themselves. And I think it was a lot to do in part with like the father that reared them. And in part, he did rear me too. You know, you can't help but there is a relationship that develops between a master and apprentice. Typically, the age plays a big, huge factor. And like Paul was old enough to be like possibly even my grandfather when he was teaching me. You know, he was up in 65. Like he was a good 10 or 15 years older than my parents. So, you know, the idea that, you know, I even remember him saying it, you know, that there is a father or son bond that grows between a master and apprentice. And I thought, God, are we rushing things a bit? Like I only just met you, you know, but it did, for sure. It absolutely did. And I did spend time with Paul, you know, both inside the workshop, outside the workshop, at his home, you know, we did socialize together a lot. Like anytime, you know, I was invited out for drinks with other members of staff, I'd make a point to include Paul too, because I knew how much he liked socializing. I knew how much he liked socializing with young people as well. It's always interesting hearing their opinions.
Thank you for sharing that. I want to talk a few more moments about some really special moments that you had. One of them in particular, while you were on Savile Row, was winning the Golden Shears. And now we actually can see them. They're right behind you. Mm-hmm. Can you explain what the Golden Shears is and why was it such a special moment in your life?
Good question. Yeah, the Golden Shears is the highest accolade, if not the only accolade you can win in tailoring. You know, there aren't many accolades going, and Golden Shears is certainly one of them. It's the only one that I know of that is specifically for tailors. I'm sure there's other competitions you can enter into while you're in school, but the Golden Shears has been run, I think it's since 1972, by the merchant tailors, and they're like the guild of the tailors. And all of the stores on Savile Row, with all the proper stores on Savile Row, there's two sides to Savile Row. There's the right side, and then there's the wrong side of Savile Row. And the right side has all the tailors on it, and the wrong side has all the made-to-measure guys. And I don't think there's this, like, I haven't been back in a while, but I don't think there's a single bespoke tailor that makes, you know, that a real bespoke tailor that makes it all in-house on the wrong side. I think they're all on the left side. So, and that's as, like, you know, if you're standing on the right side being, if you're standing at number one looking up the row, that's on your right, the Skeeves and Hawks, it goes that way. And then you've got Abercrombie and Finch, and a few going up the other way. But the Golden Shears is the members of the SRB. In order to be a member of an SRB, you have to be a bespoke tailor. So you have to fit they know who's a real tailor and who's not, I suppose. And you're a member of that group, and they are the judging. They sort of run. They're also connected to the merchant tailor. I know that they're not two inclusive organizations. They are exclusive of each other. And but I would say most of the judges who actually judge the making side of it would usually be members of SRB, or they be, you know, from those houses on Savile Row. So it's run by the old school bespoke houses of Savile Row, and it's a biannual competition. So when you win it, you have it for 2 years. And I suppose I first aspired to it, of course, when I heard about it first from Andrew Chan. I was like, oh my God, I'd love to win that competition. He kind of laughed at me and said, oh boy, you have to enter it first. And I was like, yeah, I know, but oh God, like that would be amazing, you know. And like I kind of had a lot of hopes and dreams about it, and I went to it in 2007, and a Henry Poole apprentice, I'll not say who because they didn't win it, entered the competition, and they were very hopeful that they would succeed. And I think we all pinned a lot of hopes on them succeeding, and unfortunately they didn't win that year. They didn't even rank in the top 3. And then I realized what it took to win the Shears. I mean, like, I think they probably did more time talking about the Shears than they actually did working on it. And that's when you want something, you know, talking about it, thinking about it, that's not doing anything. It's just like, I wish, isn't I'm working hard. So do different things. So not to take it away from anything about other entrants that into the competition. I'm certainly not trying to say anything about them. What I'm trying to say is that it's hard work that gets you places. Hard work, nothing else. They say it's luck. People who talk about luck are talking about somebody else. They're saying, oh, they were so lucky. And it's just like, you didn't see, like, it's like the old saying, it takes a lifetime of hard work to become an overnight success. And there was nothing lucky about me winning the Golden Shears. I put the work in. I went there in 2007, I met all the judges and I spoke to the judges. And I asked them what they wanted to see. You know, I thought it was a perfectly honest question. You know, what do you want to see? And they're going, well, we like to see checks and we like to see tailcoats, but you wouldn't, I'm paraphrasing, but you wouldn't see a check tailcoat. I made a check tailcoat. I made a kilt. So we want to see something we've never seen before, but we've seen it all. And we're going, you've never seen a kilt? I made a kilt. Like, the ensemble wasn't something that I wanted to design or wanted to wear. I wanted to win. Like, I just wanted to win. And I was going to do anything I could to win it. And I'm not saying, like, you know, I was going to, you know, cheat or anything like that. Like, I wanted to win it. I wanted to win it on my own merits. Like, you asked me actually a story about Paul. First one that jumped in my mind was while I was making the Golden Shears, Paul offered to help me with something. And I was like, I held up the shears and I kind of said something like I was going to cut his fingers off if he so much as touched the shears. Because the thing about it was, every year that somebody won it, somebody who didn't win it would always say they didn't make it. That would always be said, they didn't do it. It was done, always, they got help with that. There was some other reason why it was usually a loser, like, you know, said it. Somebody lost the competition, trying to explain they didn't win it because they weren't good enough. It was because the other person cheated. I didn't want that to be said about my garment. And whenever Paul went, I had warned Paul off it that he wasn't to touch the Golden Shears. There's nobody who's going to work on this but me. I did get assistance when it came to the pattern cutting. I wasn't a pattern cutter. And I sat down with Craig Featherstone and Alex Cook. And both of them went through the drafting of a double-breasted morning coat. And Alex had done a few of them. He definitely done morning coats before. He'd never done anything as a double-breasted. Plus, it was a very different style. So they were kind of working me through the system, and I was showing them what, you know, how I wanted to go together. And then I'd order the cloth. When the cloth arrived, the guys offered to help me lay it out and cut it. And I was like, no, I'm going to do this myself. And I probably spent some in the region of maybe about, I don't want to exaggerate, but like the guys left, like they would have stayed with me for maybe about an hour in the evening. And I think Simon Condy eventually kicked me out around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. He was just like, that's it, closing up, you're out, sort of thing. You'll have to come back tomorrow and finish it off. And he was like holding off. It was very, very late for Simon. He was doing all the paperwork I had to do, but he was holding off on it to help facilitate me. And he eventually came up and kicked me out and said, no, you have to come back to this tomorrow. So he came back the next day. And what I was doing was I was matching the checks. I was matching the checks, and it was probably the hardest thing I ever did, because it was just a mind-bogglingly difficult trying to match checks on a curved seams, but I did it. And then once I had cut the match, then I had to sew them to match. And like I started the competition in January of 2008. January of 2008. The competition didn't open until March. And I remember going to Philip Parker and asking, like, Philip, you know, how do I go about starting the Golden Shears? You know, how do I get the funding for the piece? And he said, well, there's no money. I mean, you find the cloth you want, you order it. And he's like, but it's only January. I mean, the thing doesn't open until March. And I was like, yeah, but it's opening, right? Like, they haven't suddenly cancelled it or something. And he's like, no, it's definitely opening, but it doesn't open until March. So I actually started in January, and I finished it sometime in November, and it wasn't handed up till December. Like, I was finished it probably about 2 or 3 weeks before it was ready for hand up. And but I spent, I'd say, I did something on it every week. You know, a couple of hours of an evening. Some weeks I spent every single evening on it, and other weeks I did 2 or 3 evenings on it. But I took a bit of a break. But I kept the momentum going, and I kept it all the way through. And when it came to doing anything, like anything, I took my time doing it. You know, I'd spent like, I think if you look at this shears and you measure the hand stitching on the inside, it's somewhere in the region of about 13 stitches an inch. And most people you only ever see like 9, I think, on most. You know, if it's very fast and loose, it'll be 7. But if it's done properly, it should be about 9 stitches an inch in felling stitches. I had 13. I get very high density stitches. And I remember the buttonholes take me about 45 minutes each. And a lot of time the buttonholes, they're okay. You know, they're good enough for the shears, but a lot of planning gone into it, a lot of time spent on it. And that's like, but when it came down to the night, you know, I was never confident. I didn't walk in there thinking I was going to win. I walked in there thinking that I've thrown everything in the kitchen sink at this thing. You know, I've done my best. This is the best that I could do. And that's all that I could do for it. And I certainly wasn't expecting to win at any stage in it. You know, as I said before, like there was a catwalk event to it, so I had to go down the catwalk. It had to impress styling judges, and like I don't think I really took that into consideration. I was focused more on the tailors, and then when I kind of put my ensemble together, I was just like, this is a pretty crazy style. You know, I don't know if everyone's going to like this, but you know, it's all there. You know, I think it's everything that I could put forward is there. And luckily it did. It went on to impress the judges as well. And afterwards, I'd say I was probably just in shock. I never really spoke to anyone. I didn't know what to say to people. My mother just pulled me to one side and just said, just say thank you. Someone said, congratulations, just say thank you. I was like, okay, well, congratulations. Thank you. Thank you. You know, it took a couple of days, I'd say, to sink in, but I actually won it. You know, and I won at a great time. I won in 2009. You know, the recession had hit. It hit Savile Row pretty hard, so it did a lot like COVID-19 has hit them this time. It hit because you know, they do a lot of traveling and they got a lot of you know, a lot of money people or their clients, and I think for the first time Henry Poole's, we know they were actually getting people, the phones ringing off the hook, people asking to do publicity on the Golden Shears. The Golden Shear had kind of been hyped up. There was like a Channel 4 documentary. I think it was Channel 4. Yeah, pretty sure it was Channel 4. Documentary on Savile Row. It was like a 3-part series, and they talked a lot about the Golden Shears in that, or one of the episodes. So I think people actually at that stage knew what the Golden Shears was. So when it was announced they won it, Simon Connolly did do an awful lot of work now to promote it. So he did, and he brought a lot of the people through the door. They wrote articles and did interviews, and you know, on it, and it was a great thing. It was a great payback for the faith that they had in me. I think that for the faith that they had and the opportunity that they gave me, and particularly when I left, you know, I think after I left, like there's that, you know, they invest so much money into you that whenever you leave, you're obviously you're you know, I suppose they kind of feel a little bit annoyed, you know, that you know they invested so much into you, and you end up leaving the company. Like I had my own plan of how I wanted to move forward. It didn't involve Henry Poole's. You know, and yeah, I think that winning the Golden Shears, I think it was a little bit of a payback for that disappointment that came later.